So I was reading through Nishitani Keiji's The Self-Overcoming of Nihilism, and one of the chapters was an essay dedicated to Max Stirner, which reminded me that I had been wanting to look more into Max Stirner. So here we are. Anyway, Stirner and Nietzsche get compared quite often, and while Nietzsche is the more popular by far, I find myself more attuned to Stirner's views, though that may not come as such a shock to anyone, since I am, after all, an anarchist. I think this is a good time to take a minute to go over my sources. Other than Stirner's book and the Nishitani book that I already mentioned, I have to give credit to an interesting Reddit thread and some great YouTube videos. The Acid Horizon video really gets into the weeds with Stirner's relationship with Hegel, and Anark's videos always get my highest recommendation. So, I recall when I was in my high school history class one day, back when I was cringe and still into my Ayn Rand phrase, not like now when I'm cringe and into Max Stirner, the teacher asked the class, "Would you die for your country?" And I was the only one not to raise my hand. He then asked, "Would you die for your family?" And once again, I was the only one not to raise my hand. He turned to me then, and I don't recall exactly what he asked, but something along the lines of, "Why not?" or "What would you die for?" And I think my response was, "I'd rather not die at all." But this was some years ago, so the memory's kind of vague. But I'm pretty confident Max Stirner would have answered fairly similarly, though his issue wasn't so much with death as it was with loss of agency. But anyways, in 1844, Stirner published Der Einzige und sein Eigentum, which translates to The Unique and Its Property, though it has also been translated under the title The Ego and His Own. He starts the book by quoting the opening line from Goethe's poem Vanitas Vanitatum Vanitas, which is Ich hab mein Sack auf nichts gestellt, which translates to approximately I have put my concerns onto nothing. Goethe's poem is itself a parody of the hymn Ich hab mein Sack Gott heimgestellt. Loosely, I have put my concerns onto God. In Goethe's poem, the narrator first places his concerns on nothing and is able to rejoice and drink with his comrades. He then places his concerns in turn to wealth, to women, and to warfare, and in each of those things finds some form of suffering or loss. At last he again places his concerns on nothing and feasts until there is no wine left, and I'll leave it to you to interpret what that imagery represents. So when Stirner opens with this quotation, already he is contrasting himself with those who would leave their concerns with God, with those who would put their trust in wealth or with material things, and with those who would go out to war just for the sake of it. He makes it more explicit as he continues, quote, "What is not supposed to be my concern? First and foremost, the good cause, then God's cause, the cause of mankind, of truth, of freedom, of humanity, of justice, further, the cause of my people, my prince, my fatherland, finally, even the cause of mind, and 1,000 other causes. Only my cause is never to be my concern. Shame on the egoist who thinks only of himself." End quote. So here he is signaling further through his indignation that he will have as his concern only his own self, that the cornerstone of his philosophy will not be God or truth or the good, but just himself. But let's look now a bit further at how he will argue for that. Quote, "God and mankind have concerned themselves for nothing but themselves. Let me then likewise concern myself for myself, who am equally with God the nothing of all others, who am my all, who am the only one. If God, if mankind, as you affirm, have substance enough in themselves to be all in all to themselves, then I feel that I shall still less lack that, and that I shall have no complaint to make of my emptiness. I am not nothing in the sense of emptiness, but I am the creative nothing, the nothing out of which I myself as creator create everything. Away then with every concern that is not altogether my concern. You think at least the good cause must be my concern? What's good? What's bad? Why, I myself am my concern, and I am neither good nor bad. Neither has meaning for me. The divine is God's concern, the human, man's. My concern is neither the divine nor the human, nor the true, good, just, free, etc., but solely what is mine, and it is not a general one, but is unique, as I am unique. Nothing is more to me than myself." End quote. There is a lot to unpack here, but let's start with this. Stirner has here described himself as the creative nothing, and as the unique. So he is positing that at his core there is nothingness, but a creative nothingness. In one sense, he is nothing because each other being is only concerned with themselves. So to them he is not of concern, and is thus nothing. To God he is nothing, and to the whole of mankind he is but a speck. God is concerned only with what God wants, and mankind is only concerned with its own advancement, so why should he concern himself with them? Further, why should he not follow their example and be concerned only with himself and his direct experience? Another way to look at this is that we are given the inputs of sensory data given to us by our nervous system, and then we create the world from that data as an explanatory story. So we are nothing except an interpreter of sensory input, a creative nothing, and from us comes everything in the world through our senses, and all that we perceive is our own. I am the only being that is the one receiving and interpreting sensory data that I can perceive directly, and so in that I am unique. As Stirner puts it, I am the unique. Without me, my experience ends. So the world only exists insofar as I do. Thus, my existence is the most important existence possible to me. But Stirner doesn't really want to give these descriptions or any description of himself. He refers to the self as the unique precisely as a way to refer to it without describing it. Because if he describes it, then he has tied himself to that description, and ultimately he wants to avoid anything that would tie him down. The real utmost thing to Stirner is that he always retains his own agency. He rejects Christianity because that puts God's will above his own. He rejects humanism because that puts humanity on a pedestal above him in a similar manner. If he becomes a truth seeker, then he puts truth on a pedestal and loses agency to that label. If he becomes a socialist, he becomes subservient to the needs of the workers, and so on. This is not to say that he is opposed to helping these causes. He maintains agency over what he does, and that means he must be free to allow himself to join in whatever cause he wishes. But he is opposed to taking on the labels and making them core to his identity. What he does is as he wishes. What he is only the unique. Let's take an example. Suppose something was to be the cornerstone of Stirner's philosophy. Suppose, for example, that he decided he would base his philosophy on utilitarianism, doing the most good for the most people. Then he would be split in two. There would be the ideal self that perfectly attains the essence of utilitarianism, and the unique, the creative nothing. He then would have his agency lower than this essence, subservient to it, and would have created a hierarchy on which his self, the creative nothing, is on the bottom. Now utilitarianism becomes what Stirner calls a spook, which ties him down and restricts him. This, to Stirner, is unacceptable. So the only option is to cast out all of the spooks and use nothing as the cornerstone of his philosophy, to put nothing above the self. Now, I'm a rabid fan of the Illuminatus trilogy, and there's a couple passages from there that come to mind. Both are excerpts from Hagbard Celine's fictional book, Never Whistle While You're Pissing. First, from Appendix Teth. I once overheard two botanists arguing over a damn thing that had blasphemously sprouted in a college yard. One claimed that the damn thing was a tree, and the other claimed that it was a shrub. They each had good scholarly arguments, and they were still debating when I left them. The world is forever spawning damn things, things that are neither tree nor shrub, fish nor fowl, black nor white. And the categorical thinker can only regard the spiky and buzzing world of sensory fact as a profound insult to his card index system of classifications. Worst of all are the facts which violate common sense, that dreary bog of sullen prejudice and muddy inertia. The whole history of science is the odyssey of a pixelated card indexer perpetually sailing between such damn things and desperately juggling his classifications to fit them in, just as the history of politics is the futile epic of a long series of attempts to line up the damn things and cajole them to march in regiment." End quote. Then there's this earlier quote from the lead-in to the seventh trip. "The most thoroughly and relentlessly damned, banned, excluded, condemned, forbidden, ostracized, ignored, suppressed, repressed, robbed, brutalized, and defamed of all damned things is the individual human being. The social engineers, statisticians, psychologists, sociologists, market researchers, landlords, bureaucrats, captains of industry, bankers, governors, commissars, kings, and presidents are perpetually forcing this damn thing into carefully prepared blueprints and perpetually irritated that the damn thing will not fit into the slot assigned to it. The theologians call it a sinner and try to reform it. The governor calls it a criminal and tries to punish it. The psychotherapist calls it a neurotic and tries to cure it. Still, the damn thing will not fit into their slots." End quote. Once you have been categorized, so many forces of capitalism will bear down on you to target you based on your categorization. Especially in this age of targeted advertising, data brokers, political campaigns, and content-serving algorithms. And this is where you might expect me to hawk my sponsor, but my sponsor today is Anarchism. Part of being ungovernable is being undefinable, letting nothing take so much of a hold on you that it becomes sacred. Because, and here's the main point, as soon as something becomes sacred to you, it holds power over you, and hierarchies become inevitable. That's Stirner's main point as I see it, and a whole lot of anarchist theory can be built up from it. There's a lot more to his philosophy that I haven't covered here, and he's really worth looking into further if he's piqued your interest. Thank you for watching. I hate to have to ask, but it looks like I'm about to hit a rough patch, and I'm not monetized, at least not yet. So if you're able to help out on patreon.com/omniliquid, that'd be greatly appreciated. If you aren't able or willing to do that right now, I totally get it. And just doing all the fun YouTube things, such as liking the video and getting into discussions in the comments, would also just be greatly appreciated. I hope this rough patch is over before too long, so I can just continue focusing on making even better videos and growing a great community here. Now go out and make the world a better place, as I know you will.